Have you ever noticed how often we wait for someone else to tell us what to do, how to feel, or who to be? It's subtle. Sometimes it looks like seeking advice. Other times, it's just hoping someone will validate the choice we already know we need to make. But here's the truth. The most powerful answers aren't out there. They're in you. This isn't about being tough or going it alone. It's about remembering that you already carry the wisdom you've been searching for. The Buddha didn't say, "Follow me." He said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." That's not a demand. It's an invitation. In this video, I'm not here to preach or push. I just want to share something that's helped me, and maybe it'll help you too. Because I know what it's like to feel stuck, unsure, or disconnected from your own strength. And I also know what it feels like to come back to yourself and realize you were never really lost. That's what you've been waiting for permission to trust yourself. Consider this, it. Let's explore what self-reliance really means. Not as isolation, but as inner alignment. Not as pressure, but as peace. If this message speaks to you, I'd be grateful if you gave it a like or shared it with someone who might need it today. And if you're new here, welcome. You're not alone. Subscribe to Life Lessons and let's keep growing together. Asterisk, absolutely. TN here is a 1,000-word narrative for part 1 of your video titled Awaken the Power Within, the Buddha's Call to Self-Reliance. This piece is written in American English with a soft, reflective rhythm and a tone that speaks gently to the hearts of middle-aged viewers, especially those carrying silent burdens. It draws from Buddhist teachings, focusing on the theme of dependence and the path towards self-reliance, using clear, compassionate language and emotionally resonant storytelling. Part 1. The Illusion of External Dependence. There comes a time in life, often quietly, often painfully, when we realize we've been waiting for someone to fix things, waiting for the right moment, waiting for permission to live fully. And in that waiting, something inside us begins to ache. We may not speak of it. We may not even know how to name it, but it's there, a quiet longing, a sense that we've handed over our power, piece by piece, to people, systems, and stories that were never meant to carry it. The Buddha understood this ache. He saw how deeply we cling to the illusion that salvation lies outside of us, that if we follow the right teacher, read the right book, or pray hard enough, someone will come and lift the weight from our shoulders. But the truth is just far more liberating. The Buddha didn't ask us to worship him. He didn't offer himself as a savior. He simply said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." That teaching isn't harsh. It's not a rejection of love or community. It's a call to awaken, to remember that the light we've been searching for has always been within us. We live in a culture that celebrates external success. We're taught to measure our worth by what we achieve, what we own, and how others see us. And when life doesn't go as planned, when relationships falter, careers stall, or health declines, we often feel lost, as if we've failed, as if we're broken. But the Dharma reminds us, we are not broken. We are simply asleep to our own strength. Self-reliance in Buddhism isn't about isolation. It's not about pushing people away or pretending we don't need help. It's about reclaiming our inner authority. It's about recognizing that no one else can walk our path for us. Others may walk beside us, but the steps are ours alone. And that's where healing begins. When we stop outsourcing our peace, we begin to touch something sacred. We begin to trust our own experience. We begin to listen not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet wisdom of our own heart. This isn't easy, especially for those of us who have spent years, maybe decades, believing that our value depends on others. Maybe we were raised to please. Maybe we were taught that love must be earned. Maybe we've been hurt so deeply that we no longer trust our own voice. But the Buddha's teaching doesn't shame us for that. It meets us there, in the silence, in the sorrow, in the soft places we've tried to hide. And it says, you are enough. You are capable. You are the refuge you've been seeking. There's a story in the Buddhist tradition about a man who carried a heavy load on his back. He walked for miles, exhausted, hoping someone would offer to carry it for him. But no one did. Eventually, he sat down, weeping. And in that stillness, he realized the load wasn't his to carry. He had picked it up long ago, out of habit, out of fear, and he could put it down. Many of us are carrying emotional burdens we don't even recognize: guilt, shame, regret, the weight of unmet expectations, the fear of disappointing others, and we keep walking, hoping someone will relieve us. But the path of self-reliance invites us to pause, to sit, to breathe, and to ask, what am I still carrying that no longer serves me? This question isn't meant to overwhelm us. It's meant to free us, because when we begin to release what's not ours, we make space for what is, for clarity, for compassion, for courage, and in that space, we begin to remember who we are, not who the world told us to be, not who we tried to become to fit in, but who we are beneath all the layers. A soul capable of wisdom, a heart capable of love, a mind capable of awakening. The Buddha didn't promise comfort, he promised truth, and truth, when we're ready to receive it, is the most compassionate gift of all. It tells us we don't need to wait. We don't need to beg. We don't need to prove ourselves. We simply need to return to our breath, to our body, to our being. And from that place, we begin to walk. Not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Not with certainty, but with trust. This is the beginning of self-reliance. Not a destination, but a direction. Not a demand, but a devotion. And as we walk, we begin to see the answers we sought were never far. The strength we longed for was never lost. The peace we craved was always within reach. We just needed to stop looking outside long enough to notice. So today, let us pause. Let us honor the ache. Let us acknowledge the places where we've handed over our power. And let us gently begin to take it back, not with force, but with love. Because the Buddha's call to self-reliance is not a rejection of others. It's a return to ourselves. And in that return, we find not only healing but freedom. The role of mindfulness and self-reliance are moments in life's quiet, almost invisible, when we realize we've been living on autopilot. We wake up, go through the motions, meet expectations, and keep moving. But somewhere beneath the surface, something feels off, not broken, just disconnected. We may not say it out loud. We may not even know how to explain it. But deep down, we sense that we've drifted from ourselves, that the person we're showing the world isn't quite the person we feel inside. This is where mindfulness begins, not as a technique, but as a homecoming dot in the Buddhist tradition. Mindfulness is more than awareness. It's presence. It's the gentle act of returning to ourselves, moment by moment, without judgment. It's the practice of seeing clearly, feeling deeply, and choosing consciously. And for those of us who've spent years depending on others for direction, validation, or worth, mindfulness is the doorway to self-reliance. Because when we begin to observe our thoughts, we start to notice how many of them aren't truly ours. They're echoes of old voices, scripts we inherited, fears we absorbed, expectations we never questioned. We think we're making choices, but often we're just reacting out of habit, out of pain, out of survival. Mindfulness interrupts that cycle. It invites us to pause, to breathe, to ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this reaction rooted in truth or in fear? Is this the life I want or the life I was told to want? These questions aren't easy. They stir things up. They bring us face to face with the parts of ourselves we've avoided, the grief we never processed, the anger we buried, the dreams we abandoned. But the Buddha didn't promise comfort. He promised clarity, and clarity, though sometimes painful, is the beginning of freedom. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to reclaim our power, not by force, but by presence. We stop outsourcing our decisions. We stop blaming others for our emotions. We stop waiting for someone else to fix what only we can heal. And in that space, something beautiful happens. We begin to trust ourselves, not because we have all the answers, not because we're perfect, but because we're finally listening. We're finally showing up for ourselves with compassion and courage. This is the heart of self-reliance. Not independence in the worldly sense, but inner sovereignty. The ability to stand in our truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The willingness to feel what's real, even when it hurts. The strength to choose what's right, even when it's hard. For many of us, this journey begins late, after the kids are grown, after the career has plateaued, after the noise has quieted, and suddenly we're left with ourselves and the question, who am I, really? Mindfulness doesn't answer that question with words. It answers with silence, with breath, with presence. It teaches us to sit with the unknown, to soften into the mystery, to trust the unfolding. And in that stillness, we begin to remember. We remember the child who used to dream freely. We remember the teenager who questioned everything. We remember the adult who longed for meaning, but got lost in responsibility. We remember that beneath all the roles, all the masks, all the noise, we are still here, whole, worthy, awake. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, from clinging to what's impermanent, from resisting what is. Mindfulness helps us see those attachments clearly. It helps us loosen our grip. It helps us let go not of life, but of illusion. And when we let go, we begin to live, not reactively, not fearfully, but intentionally. We begin to choose relationships that nourish us. We begin to speak words that reflect our truth. We begin to create lives that feel aligned, just impressive. This isn't a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice. Some days we'll feel clear. Other days we'll feel lost. But mindfulness isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again with kindness, with honesty, with grace. And as we return, we grow. We grow into people who can hold space for others without losing ourselves. We grow into people who can face discomfort without running. We grow into people who can live with open hearts even when the world feels heavy. This is the transformation the Buddha spoke of, not a change in circumstances, but a change in consciousness. A shift from fear to freedom, from reaction to response, from dependence to self-reliance. And it begins with one breath. So let us breathe. Let us notice. Let us honor the truth that's rising within us, because the power we've been searching for isn't in a book, a guru, or a plan. It's in our own awareness. It's in our own presence. It's in our own willingness to be here fully, honestly, lovingly. Mindfulness is not a luxury. It's a lifeline, especially in a world that pulls us in every direction, that tells us who to be, how to feel, what to want. But we don't have to follow blindly. We can pause. We can reflect. We can choose. And in that choosing, we awaken. Not to a new version of ourselves, but to the one that's been waiting all along. If this message touches something tender in you, let it settle. Let it breathe. Let it guide you gently toward the next step. And if you feel moved, share this with someone who may be quietly longing to come home to themselves too. We're not alone on this path, but we must walk it from within. Let's keep walking together, in stillness, in truth, in light. Responsibility as a spiritual practice. There's a quiet moment in many of our lives when we realize we've been waiting for someone else to take the lead. Not just in the big decisions, but in the emotional weight we carry. We wait for someone to apologize. We wait for someone to understand. We wait for someone to fix what's broken inside us. And while that waiting may feel justified, it often leaves us stuck, trapped in a loop of longing, resentment, and silence. The Buddha understood this deeply human tendency. He saw how we cling to the idea that someone else must change before we can be free. But he offered a different path, a gentler, more courageous one. He taught that responsibility is not a burden, it's a doorway to liberation. In the West, the word responsibility often feels heavy. It's tied to duty, obligation, even guilt. But in the Dharma, responsibility is sacred. It's the act of reclaiming our power, not to control others, but to care for ourselves. When we take responsibility for our thoughts, our reactions, our choices, we begin to shift. We stop blaming. We stop waiting. We stop outsourcing our peace. And in that shift, something opens. something soft, something strong. We begin to see that our suffering isn't always caused by what happened, but by how we carry it. Many of us have been hurt, betrayed, abandoned. We've lived through losses that changed us, and it's tempting to believe that healing depends on someone else's remorse, someone else's return, someone else's recognition. But the Buddhist teaching reminds us, freedom doesn't come from what others do. It comes from what we choose to do with our pain. This isn't about denying the hurt. It's about honoring it. It's about saying, yes, this happened. Yes, it mattered. And now, I choose how I carry it. That choice is sacred. That choice is ours. That responsibility, in this light, becomes an act of compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. We begin to ask, what stories am I still telling myself? What emotions am I still avoiding? What patterns am I still repeating? And instead of judging ourselves, we begin to listen. We begin to hold space. We begin to heal. This is the spiritual practice of responsibility, not as punishment, but as presence. We show up for our own experience. We stop abandoning ourselves. We stop waiting for someone else to validate our truth. And in that showing up, we begin to transform. We begin to notice how often we've given our power away, how often we've said yes when we meant no, how often we've stayed silent when our heart was screaming, and instead of shame, we feel sorrow, a tender sorrow, the kind that says, I didn't know. I was trying to survive. I did the best I could. That sorrow is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the beginning of awakening, because when we take responsibility, we don't just change our behavior, we change our relationship with ourselves. We begin to trust our own voice. We begin to honor our own boundaries. We begin to live from a place of integrity, not perfection, but alignment. And that alignment brings peace, not the kind of peace that depends on everything going right, but the kind of peace that says, even when things go wrong, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know how to return to myself. This is the gift of responsibility. It's not about control. It's about clarity. We stop trying to fix others. We stop trying to change the past. We stop trying to be someone we're not. And we begin to live fully, honestly, freely. For many of us, this shift comes later in life, after years of caretaking, after decades of compromise, after a lifetime of putting others first. And suddenly, we realize we've been absent from our own life, but it's never too late to return. The Buddhist path is not linear. It's not rigid. It's spacious. It meets us where we are. And it invites us to begin right here, right now. To take one breath. To make one choice. To speak one truth. And in that beginning, we reclaim what was never lost: our dignity, our strength, our light. Responsibility, then, becomes a form of love, a way of saying to ourselves, I matter. My experience matters. My healing matters. And when we live from that place, we stop waiting for others to change. We stop needing their approval. We stop fearing their rejection, because we've found something deeper, something steadier, something sacred. We've found ourselves. This is not easy work. It's tender. It's messy. It's brave. But it's also beautiful, because every time we choose responsibility over blame, presence over avoidance, truth over silence, we move closer to freedom. Not the kind of freedom that escapes pain, but the kind that transforms it. So, let us walk this path, not perfectly, but sincerely. Let us take responsibility, not because we have to, but because we're ready. Ready to stop waiting, ready to stop hiding, ready to live. And in that living, may we find what we've been searching for all along, not in others, not in outcomes, but in the quiet strength of our own heart. If this message touches something tender in us, let it settle, let it breathe, let it guide us gently toward the next step. We're not alone on this path, but we must walk it from within. Let's keep walking together, in stillness, in truth, in light, letting go of blame and victimhood. There are wounds we carry that never made it into words, moments that changed us, but we never told anyone, disappointments that settled into our bones, quietly shaping how we see the world and how we see ourselves. We've all been hurt by people we trusted, by things we thought would last, by life itself, when it didn't go the way we hoped. And somewhere along the way, we began to believe that our pain defined us, that we were victims of circumstance, that healing depended on someone else's apology, someone else's change, someone else's return. But the Buddha offered a different way, not a denial of pain, but a path through it, not a rejection of our story, but a deeper understanding of it. He taught that liberation begins when we stop clinging to blame, not because what happened didn't matter, but because holding on keeps us stuck. Blame is seductive. It gives us a sense of control. It lets us point the finger outward, away from the ache inside. It tells us, I feel this way because of them. And sometimes that's true. But the Dharma asks us to look deeper, because when we live in blame, we live in bondage. We replay the past. We rehearse the pain. We build walls around our hearts, hoping they'll protect us, but they only isolate us. And slowly, we lose touch with who we are beneath the hurt. The Buddha didn't ask us to forget. He asked us to see clearly, to recognize that suffering is part of life, but clinging to it is optional. He taught that freedom is not found in changing the past, it's found in changing our relationship to it. This is not easy, especially when the pain runs deep, especially when the betrayal was real, especially when the loss still echoes in our chest. But the Dharma doesn't rush us. It doesn't shame us. It meets us where we are, with tenderness, with truth, with time, and it whispers, you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. Letting go of blame doesn't mean pretending everything was okay. It means we stop giving our power to the people who hurt us. It means we stop waiting for justice before we allow ourselves to heal. It means we stop defining our worth by someone else's behavior. This is the beginning of liberation. We begin to ask, what am I still carrying that no longer serves me? What story am I still telling that keeps me small? What would it feel like to release this, not for them, but for me? And slowly, gently, we begin to loosen our grip. We begin to feel the weight we've been dragging. We begin to notice the tightness in our chest. We begin to see how much energy it takes to stay angry, to stay hurt, to stay guarded. And we begin to choose something else, not because we're ready, but because we're willing. Willing to trust that healing is possible. Willing to believe that peace is available. Willing to walk toward freedom, even if we're still limping. This is the path of self-reliance, not as isolation, but as inner strength, not as denial, but as deep acceptance. We take responsibility not for what happened, but for how we carry it now. And in that choice, we begin to transform. We begin to soften. We begin to soften. We begin to remember who we were before the pain and who we still are beneath it. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, and blame is a form of clinging. It ties us to the past. It binds us to the people who hurt us. It keeps us from living fully in the present. But when we let go, we don't lose ourselves. We find ourselves. We find a part of us that is still whole, still wise, still capable of love. And we begin to live not from the wound, but from the wisdom it gave us. This is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Some days, the pain will rise again. Some days, the anger will return. Some days, we'll feel like victims all over again. But mindfulness helps us notice. Compassion helps us stay. And the Dharma helps us choose. Choose to breathe. Choose to release. Choose to return to ourselves. Because we are not powerless. We are not broken. We are not defined by what others did. We are the ones who get to decide what comes next. And that decision is sacred. So let us honor our pain. Let us honor our pain. Let's tell our stories. Let us grieve what was lost. But let us also remember, we are more than our suffering. We are more than our past. We are more than our blame. We are beings of light, of strength, of possibility. And the moment we choose to let go, not perfectly, but intentionally, we begin to awaken, not to a new life, but to the life that's been waiting for us all along. If this message touches something tender in us, let it settle, let it breathe, let it guide us gently toward the next step. We're not alone on this path, but we must walk it from within. Let's keep walking together, in stillness, in truth, in light. Living the teaching daily, there's a quiet truth many of us carry, often unspoken. We know what matters, but we struggle to live it. We've read the books, we've heard the teachings, we've nodded in agreement when someone spoke of peace, presence, and letting go. And yet, when the day begins, when the noise returns, when the demands pile up, we forget, not because we're careless, but because we're human. The Buddha understood this. He didn't offer a one-time solution. He offered a path, a way of being, a daily practice. And that's what this part of the journey is about. Not just knowing the Dharma, but living it. Not just admiring the light, but becoming it. For many of us, life has become a series of tasks. We wake up, we perform, we endure. And somewhere in the middle of it all, we lose touch with the sacred. We lose touch with ourselves. But the teachings of the Buddha were never meant to be confined to temples or texts. They were meant to be lived in the kitchen, in traffic, in conversation, in silence. Because every moment is a doorway, every breath is a chance to return. And when we begin to see life this way, something shifts. We stop waiting for the perfect conditions. We stop postponing our peace. We stop believing that spirituality is something separate from daily life. Instead, we begin to practice. We begin to bring mindfulness into the mundane. We begin to speak with intention. We begin to listen with compassion. We begin to walk with awareness. This is the heart of daily spiritual practice, not as performance, but as presence. We don't need incense or chants to live the Dharma. We need sincerity. We need courage. We need the willingness to show up for our own life. And that showing up begins with small things. It begins with how we greet the morning. It begins with how we respond to frustration. It begins with how we treat the people closest to us. Because the real test of our practice isn't how peaceful we feel in meditation. It's how we carry that peace into the chaos. The Buddha taught that awakening is not a destination. It's a way of walking, and we walk it one step at a time. Some days we'll feel clear. Some days we'll feel lost. Some days we'll forget everything we thought we knew. But the path is still there. The breath is still there. The light is still there. The light is still within us. We simply begin again. This is the beauty of practice. It doesn't demand perfection. It invites return. And in that return, we find grace, that we find the strength to forgive. We find the clarity to choose. We find the softness to feel. For many of us, this kind of living feels unfamiliar. We've been taught to push, to strive, to achieve. We've been rewarded for productivity, not presence. But the Dharma invites us to slow down, to listen, to feel, to be. And in that slowing, we begin to heal. We begin to notice the tension in our shoulders. We begin to hear the stories we tell ourselves. We begin to see the patterns we've been repeating. And instead of judgment, we offer compassion. We say, I see you. I understand. I'm here. This is the practice. This is the path. This is the way we awaken, not through grand gestures, but through gentle attention. The Buddha didn't ask us to escape life. He asked us to meet it fully, to meet joy without clinging, to meet pain without resistance, to meet each moment with an open heart. And when we do, something sacred unfolds. We begin to live not from habit, but from truth, not from fear, but from love. Not from reaction, but from wisdom. This kind of living doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow unfolding, a quiet remembering, a daily devotion, and it's available to all of us, no matter our past, no matter our pain, no matter our doubts. We don't need to be perfect. We don't need to be ready. We simply need to begin. Begin with one breath. Begin with one choice. That begin with one moment of presence. And from there, the path reveals itself. We begin to see that every interaction is a chance to practice. Every challenge is a chance to grow. Every day is a chance to return. This is the call of the Buddha, not to follow blindly, but to live deeply, to embody the teachings. To walk the path. To become the light. And when we do, we don't just change ourselves, we change the world around us. We become more patient, not more kind, more awake. And in that awakening, we offer others the permission to do the same. So let us live the teaching. Let us carry the Dharma into our homes, our work, our relationships. Let us remember that spirituality is not something we do, it's who we are. And in that remembering, may we find peace. May we find purpose. May we find the strength to keep walking together in stillness, in truth, in light. Conclusion: as we come to the end of this reflection, let's pause and remember what we've uncovered together. We explored the illusion of external dependence, the quiet strength of mindfulness, the sacred practice of taking responsibility, the courage to release blame, and the beauty of living the Dharma in our everyday lives. Each of these teachings is not just philosophy, they're invitations. Invitations to return to ourselves, to trust our inner wisdom, to walk with clarity, even when the path feels uncertain. The Buddha didn't ask us to be perfect. He asked us to be awake. An awakening begins with small, daily choices. How we breathe, how we respond, how we show up for our own hearts. This isn't just about learning. It's about learning, about turning insight into action, about becoming the light we've been searching for. So if something in this video stirred something in you, if a truth landed, if a memory surfaced, if a quiet yes echoed inside, honor it. Let it guide you. Let it grow. And if this message feels meaningful, we'd be grateful if you gave it a like, left a comment, or shared it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe to Life Lessons to continue this journey of reflection, healing, and inner awakening. We're walking this path together in stillness, in truth, in light.